going to be hooked. And then you're going to want to buy it. And then you're going to learn as we talk that I also offer counseling, spiritual counseling, which has nothing to do with religion, right? It's non-religious. I always say, not everyone has a religion, but everybody has a spirit. And people ask me, what's the difference between spirituality and religion? And I say, look, religion is for people who don't want to go to hell, and spirituality is for people that have already been there.
I like that. Can I borrow that?
You can certainly borrow it. Yeah, I'm borrowing it. I don't know who said it originally, but it got me in trouble once. But anyway, yeah. So, and then if you want to, help with a particular issue, you can get a complimentary session with me to see if there is some synergy between us and you'd like some help with a particular aspect of your life. So that's about it, Bram. That's the commercial.
That's a commercial cutscene. Finish.
Now let's get back to the show.
Yes, let's go back to the show. So, Stephen, do me a favor. Why are people struggling in relationships? What are you seeing? What's going on?
Well, there's different levels you can talk about, but the bottom line is this: we are going through a transformation, and we're always going through a transformation, right? It's just that this is magnified more than probably most of the transformations that we've been through in human consciousness before. Why is that? Because there's so much uncertainty in the world because everybody is looking for certainty in the wrong places. They're looking for a way externally to get certainty. The media's got out of the way. Now people are looking on the internet, on social media, and it isn't there. And they'll never find it there. We're being pushed inside of ourselves to use our internal mechanisms. What do they say? You've got to go in to get out. The book I just started created is called Quantum Wealth: Turning Wealth Inside Out. We have to create it inside ourselves first because, as you and I know, life is a mirror, right? So, and we have this thing called intuition, even though people will argue with me and tell me they don't, but it's just because they've forgotten or they haven't been using it, right? And so we need to tune back into our intuition and start living from our heart, speaking from our heart. And if something is true, it'll be heartfelt, like the ancients used to do. That's who told us to live from our heart, speak from our heart, right? And so we're in a revolution. That's why the book I just wrote called Quantum Wealth Revolution. What does revolution mean? It means returning to the original point, right? So we're going back, not forwards. We're going back to being who we really are.
So, you said we're going back, not forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That reminds me of some online chatter. Let's go back to traditional roles.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to a simpler time. Let's go back to divorce rates weren't as high as they are, especially for those who get married second and third time. Could that be one of the dynamics of going back, meaning that going back to something that was a little bit simpler, a little bit more common, but yet forgotten?
It could, yes. And this is someone speaking who's been married 4 times. So I beat the three. But these things occur not to us, but for us, right? Because there's a gift in all these experiences when we're ready and willing to look at it. And one of the beliefs I have, and I think we talked about this on the last, I was going to say episode. It wasn't the last episode. It was probably 100 episodes ago. But anyway, last time we were together, and I said I've adopted this belief, some time ago, that nothing happens to us, that everything happens for us. And I know you feel the same way. It's just difficult to see that, because we're taught, well, it's not your fault. You're a victim. Oh my God, they did that to you. And people reinforce the victimness, don't they? But as long as we're a victim, we're not going anywhere. So when I say, that nothing happens to us, everything happens for us, that's a little bit jarring for some people, right? When they've been through, abuse, right? Or had a terrible tragedy and maybe one of their children has passed away, or there's all kinds of things that can happen in our lives that are beyond what most people can comprehend in trauma. I understand that. And what I'm saying, it happens for you. I'm not saying that someone didn't do something that hurt your feelings. I'm not saying somebody didn't do something in your life, but they didn't do it to you. They did it for you at a very deep spiritual level. They love you and they're doing it so they can be a mirror for you for you to see yourself and the parts of you that need healing. Now, that can be a little confusing because people go, hold on a second, Stephen. I would never abuse anybody. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, I would never do that. I understand. But the mirror is not that you would do it. The mirror is you wouldn't do that to anybody else. You would defend anybody else that was happening to, but you allowed someone to do it to you. And therein is the mirror. What does that say about yourself? Now, if it happens, if you're walking down the street and someone suddenly clocks you around the head, you didn't let that happen, right? I understand that, right? But if you stay in a relationship that is abusive, that is toxic, then that's on you. You allowed it. And so, what the issue might be for you is setting boundaries, respecting yourself, and not allowing anybody to disrespect you, not just verbally, emotionally, but also physically, right? And you might think, well, I can handle it. And you might say to people, well, they're a good person. They've had all these things happen to them in the past. So you got to understand. No, you don't. You're not their freaking therapist, right? And you're not their punching bag either, right? And so it doesn't mean you can't care for them. It doesn't mean that you don't love them, but it means you love yourself enough to not allow someone to abuse you. So that's an example, right? But there's all kinds of things. There could be things that you might be judging about other people, which is really something that you're judging in yourself, right? It may be parts of yourself that you have ignored or lost hope you can be. The characteristics you're seeing in someone that draws you to them are also characteristics that exist in you. And maybe the draw is you're seeing those people being who you want to be. And so you're drawn to them. But the reality is it's who you want to be in the world. Because everything that you see in someone else is a potential that lies within you. Now, I do qualify that by saying if you're 55 years old and you want to be an NBA basketball player, that's a different thing, right? That's a different thing. There are some physical limitations there, but you know what I mean.
You give the basketball example, physical limitations. Could there be then emotional limitations in our relationships?
Well, there are, right? The difference is, and I hesitate to say this because, the next thing next week is going to come on the news that there's now a 55-year-old woman playing NBA basketball in the men's NBA. I don't know, right? But the point is, some limitations are self-imposed and some limitations are imposed. And what do I mean by that? Well, the physical thing, that might be a bigger challenge than all of it, right? So sometimes you got to accept that your dream, that you thought. I mean, that always reminds me of Field of Dreams. You remember the movie with Kevin Costner? And he said, "Build it, will come." And at one point, there's a player called Doc, right? And so there's an imaginary wall, right, at the end of the actual the field, right, the field where they play, and somebody gets hurt in the stands, and the player they called Doc ran to the stands to help the child. And as he's about to step over the line, they said, "Doc, if you step past that line, you can't come back." And he said, "I know." And they said, "Well, you're not going to be able to live the dream anymore." And he said, "Look, sometimes you have to give up the dream to find your purpose."
I love that. That makes me, you know what? I need to go rewatch that movie because it's been some time.
Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing movie. There's so many layers in it, right? Beautiful layers. Um, so, maybe you're not going to be a basketball player at 55, but there is a reason that you're here. And hopefully by then you found out what it is. But maybe you haven't. I mean, some people don't find out their purpose in life until they're until they're in their 70s. I don't know. Colonel Sanders, he made it happen in his 60s. But and then people say, well, how do I know we're getting off track a little bit, but some people say, how do I know what my purpose is? God hasn't told me what my purpose is. I go, I got news for you. God's not going to tell you what your purpose is. You are going to decide what your purpose is, right? So stop waiting for someone else to save you. Stop waiting for somebody else to tell you why you're here and decide. And it might change. You know, you might find yourself, your purpose is one thing today, and in a year, you might decide, you know what, that's not my purpose anymore. But actually doing what I did has helped me find it. But if you do nothing, nothing's going to happen. And
Yes.
if God was going to tell you why you're here, God would have probably told you that at the beginning, right? He said, go have life experiences. And through those experiences, you'll know what your purpose is.
I look at some relationships that I've had, and there's a period of time, let's say my 20s, because I think that's when I've dated the most. Looking back as I approach my 40s, or 40, I should say, I began to realize that there was patterns being established.
Yeah.
And when I was in it, Stephen, I was like, oh my God, why can't I make it work? All these women are, something's wrong with them. In my
Mm-hmm.
30s, I was like, oh, something's wrong with me. Right? But that was a hard thing to say in the mirror that day because I was crying when I was saying that because I realized that although it was easier to blame everybody else, it wasn't benefiting me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was harder to say that, yes, I may be the one that's the architect of this disastrous decade of my life. That was hard to say. But once I accepted that and realized the power that I truly had in that acceptance of what I can control, then everything improved. That type of conversation to realize that, hey, there are patterns in my relationships, especially when they're not working. What do you think are some of the obstacles that people are facing?
Mm. So first of all, to actually get that when you're in your 30s is pretty amazing, right? You know, most people, I don't know about most people, I can't speak for most people. It's like saying, you know, I don't like to generalize, which is a good thing to say before you generalize, right? Um, but that's young, man. That's great. So, and I think as each generation comes in, I think they come in a little bit more awakened than the previous generation, and they figure things out sooner, and that's heartwarming to see. That's the first thing I wanted to say, and then because what happened for you, you became aware, right? You became aware, and awareness is the first step to transformation. Awareness that there is an issue, awareness that you probably had something to do with it. It doesn't mean that the other person didn't do some of the things they did. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you can't control that and you can't change it. What you can change is what you do from now going forward, right? And if you can have the courage, and it is courageous, to say, well, I keep repeating the same pattern. First of all, recognizing the pattern is huge, and that I'm repeating it over and over, no matter who the person on the other side of the relationship is. Therefore, I must be contributing and be accountable and responsible for a part of it, right? So that's great because then, and here's the great thing about it, right? Then you can change it, but not until. Because so many people want to be the victim. They don't realize it consciously. And society makes it easy for us to be the victim. Our friends and our families make it, oh, well, you know, yeah, well, they did this to you. They were terrible. And I told you they were a bad person, and that's not helping, right? It's not helping, right? It's making it worse because then the person is saying, yeah, I'm a victim. And people create an identity around that and it gets reinforced and they get attention out of it. So they're getting something out of being a victim, right? And that's not helping either. It's like if, someone's an addict and they're addicted to heroin and you keep giving them, heroin. Hey, listen, yeah, it's okay. I know you don't feel too well. You can't be drunk. So here you go. Here's some more heroin, right? I mean, that's not what you want to be doing, right? Um, so it's very difficult to change being a victim. And, one of the biggest issues in our society, and always has been, is low self-esteem, right? And so some people, it's just the slightest kind of criticism, it just destroys them. It seems to. It doesn't really, but they feel like it did, right? And so we have to be careful how we communicate this. I mean, some people are more resilient than others. You're very resilient. So you could look in the mirror and look at yourself because you had strong self-esteem. And so you were more willing and open and capable of taking a look at yourself and saying, hey, I need to make some changes. No big deal. I can do that. Right. Um, but the bottom line is, you either do it now, you do it later. Right. That's the bottom line because you're not going anywhere as long as you've got these patterns. You're just going to keep repeating them because these patterns, which were usually formed in your childhood, have now created or did create vibrational energy in your body that occurred when that pattern began. And you didn't have any choice. At that point, you were a victim and you couldn't help it. As a child, we're in the care of our caretakers and people around us and our teachers and everybody else that are creating these patterns within us, telling us certain things about ourselves, about the world, about who we are. And we have no way of resisting that. We have no way of shutting that out. And so these patterns are usually created when we're children. And there are reasons for all those things. It's because we're supposed to have these patterns. We're supposed to have challenges in our lives that cause us to have experience where we're going to suffer. Suffering is a part of the process. You got to get over it. It's going to happen. What we can do, though, is we can heal it, right? And that is the challenge of our lives so that we can remember who we really are. And you go, what do you mean, remember who I know who I am. No, you don't. You forgot. How do you know? Because I forgot too, right? So the bottom line is, for me, and I'd be interested to see what you're going to say, in our essence, we are fully enlightened, right? Whereas a soul is a spirit. We got it all, we got our shit together, right? We're fully enlightened. But if we were to come into this life, into this experience, being fully enlightened, what's the point, right? You've already got there, right? So we put ourselves, who we really are, on the back burner. We forget things so we can have a life experience so we can remember them again. People go, wow, that seems like a lot of work. Well, it is, but you made the choice. And you go, well, why would I do that? Why would I forget who I really am? Well, the analogy I give people is this. Look, imagine you're in bliss. You're in bliss, everything, you're just totally blissed out, right? And let's say you were there for a long time, and then what's going to happen eventually? What do they say? If you're around anything long enough, you're going to start taking it for granted, aren't you? And if it's been so long you've been there, it's not going to feel the same, right? It's not going to feel the same. So you say, well, what I could do is forget who I am, go down to earth, have some experiences, joy, sadness, anger, all these other different things that I can't experience as a spirit, who I really am, so that I can slowly begin to remember who I really am, and then eventually come back here and experience bliss as though it was for the very first time. And that is the rapture, right? So it sounded like a long-winded way of explaining it, but that's what I believe. I could be completely wrong. I mean, when I get to heaven, and I will get there, God might say, geez, man, boy, were you wrong, right? You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, beliefs are just stuff we make up, right? But it feels right for me. It gives me an understanding of what we're going through and why we're going through it so that I'm able to cope with life's challenges, get through it, always knowing that I will get through it. And then on the other side is going to be me being able to experience more of who I really am. And so throughout life, we go through these phases of being in and out, right? So we can, I mean, I've had an experience of being fully enlightened, but then I forgot, right? So then you go, what? How'd you forget that? Why didn't you stay there? I don't have a choice, right? It's like you go, it's like a wave. Life is like a wave, right? So you're in and out. I mean, one day you can wake up and feel freaking great, and the next day you feel like shit, right? I mean, that's life. It's not, hey, I feel great today. I'm always going to feel great. Probably not, right? You're probably not. You're probably going to have good days and bad days. And so, but we learn from all of them, and we've got to have contrast. You got to know up to know down, left to right, hot and cold, joy, sadness. You know what I mean? And to the extent you experience one, you can experience the other. So, anyway, I don't know if that was, I forgot what we started talking about, but anyway, that's where we ended up.
Yeah, no, I think that, and you reminded me of like my upbringing from when I used to attend church, where that's what some of the fallen angels did, right? They had bliss all around them. They came to heaven to experience a different type of bliss, and they were procreating with the humans on earth, right?
Mhm.
From that perspective, um, I wonder then, is the pursuit of this bliss, the pursuit of thinking you have something that's fulfilling where it's really fleeting, is that a distraction or maybe even worse yet, a coping mechanism so we don't have to sit and realize that we don't have bliss as long as I'm pursuing it?
Okay. So we don't have a manual, right? We don't come into this life and say, okay, here's the manual, follow the manual, you'll be fine, right? We don't. What's our manual? Life. Life becomes our manual, right? And it teaches us, right? Now, you may draw into your life mentors, teachers, and you can learn from them, but you're going to have experiences and you're going to learn from them, right? You're going to have experiences through them, but those experiences are not meant to define you, they are meant to refine you, to help you become more of who you really are, right? It doesn't happen to you, it happens for you in that endeavor. I say to people, listen, have you ever have you ever had a day in your life when you said, this is the worst day of my life? Right? People go, yeah, for sure. I go, yeah. How many like me have had more than one? Yeah, well, good, right? So, but if you really look back on it, how many of you think, well, I wouldn't want to go through that again? But the fact that I went through it reminded me more of who I really am than I would have ever remembered had I not been through that experience. And most people go, yeah, I don't want to go through it again. But in a way, I'm glad I did, right? Not at the time, and maybe not the day after, but at some point you look back and I go, yeah, I did. We learn more from our pain and suffering than we ever do from our successes, right? Success, we party, we have a tough experience, we ponder, right? And that's when we learn, right? Or that's where we remember. I mean, Socrates once said, learning is simply remembering, right? So we're remembering who we are. We go through a tough experience, but the secret that you just said from the very beginning is looking at yourself, not looking at the other person, not blaming them, if possible, to give gratitude to them because they have mirrored back to you pieces of yourself that you had either given up and lost along the way, judged in yourself, or had allowed people to do to you what they've done for you so that you can make sure that you learn then to set boundaries that you are worthy.
I
You are
was in
oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna no, I was gonna say, Stephen, to your point, I was in I had a relationship, a previous relationship a while years ago, and one thing that it was painful experience. When I was going through it, I felt that way. When I was looking back, I felt that way even more because I had clarity. But after a couple of months, what I really appreciated about that experience was it showed me areas of my life that I need to work on, and it showed me, more importantly, areas of my life that I want to focus on. When that relationship ended at its time, within the next 12 months, I accomplished things that I was struggling to accomplish when I was in it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Me too, man. So I'm going back through mine. I'm going, yeah, no shit. So, yeah. So what we do, I can't speak for you. What I did is in that relationship and others, I tended to give myself away. I tended to not do the things that make me who I am, right? Um, I allowed So step back from there a second. So usually, not always, but usually in a relationship, you've got this magnetic energy that draws you together, right? You both have some similar traumas, um, but the way you have used those traumas in your life is to try and either please people, right? Or you think that you need something from other people and the world to fill the hole in you. And you're a taker, right? And we learn, or we think we learn as a child, for example, that if we give enough, we'll get love. But we never do. We never do. And we're not supposed to because that's the lesson, right? And the other person thinks if I can get enough, I will feel loved. But I need things from other people. I need to feel loved by them in order for me to love back. And I'm scared to love back because I might get rejected. I might get left alone. So both people are looking for love in different ways. They're looking for something or somebody to fill the hole. And it's impossible, which makes them perfect for each other, right? Because eventually the giver is just going to be going, holy shit, it doesn't matter how much I give, it's never enough. Because it isn't. You can't fill that hole. And the other person's thinking, they just don't give me enough, right? If they just gave me more, I would know I was loved and the hole would fill. And it's just not even possible. It can never happen. So I tell people, listen, you're going to figure this out one way or the other, or you're going to die not knowing, right? Well, those are the outcomes you can get, right? So I just say, look, I've been through it. I know I'm not judging anything, right? Because I can't, because took me years and years to figure it out. All I hope is that through my experiences and what I've learned, I can help you not have to go through everything I went through, right? That I'm using my experiences, my pain and suffering, so you don't have to go through it. But if you do, that's okay too. That's entirely up to you. I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm just giving you the best that I can give you to help you if that's what you're ready to do. If not, it's perfectly okay. Call me back in a couple of years or whatever it is, right? You know what I mean? But that's the reality of it. And, one of the biggest things in our lives, which is also really hard, is to not be attached. Not just the material world, but outcomes, you know, not be attached to whether people agree or they don't agree, whether people are going to listen to you or think you're crazy. Sometimes I get both, right? They listen to me, but they still think I'm crazy. But you know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at, right? What I say is this, and you've heard this phrase many times: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? Well, I wasn't ready for a long ass time, but the teacher was there for me when I was ready. And it was Tamaz, right? She taught me more than anybody else has ever taught me. And I come from a background of working with people like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki. I know the gurus, right? And I'm not saying I didn't learn a lot from them. I did. I mean, transformational. But and I learned more from my relationship with Tamaz than I learned in any of those other relationships. It was incredible, profound. But again, I had to be ready, right? I had to be ready to step into it. And I was so drawn by her, magnetic, man. It was so magnetic. She was my heroine, right? I was addicted to her to the point where I would give up everything for her to get that fix, right? So I completely understand the power of addiction. It doesn't have to be drugs, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be TV, right? It could be all kinds of things. But she was that for me. But I needed that to have the experience that I had with her to see myself clearly. Now that didn't happen right away. Like when you said you're in that relationship, it was tough, it was very difficult, it was painful. But pain is a good thing, man. Not at the time, but it will one way or another get you to look. If not, the next time it'll be more painful.
Do you think some people are shying away from the experience to spare themselves of potential pain?
For sure. Yeah, I think we all, I did it for a long time. I had a lot of pain when I was a child. Um, and I think we all do, right? We all go through trauma. We just don't know everybody else is going through it. We think we're the only one, right? But for me, and you can't say, well, your trauma was worse than mine, or my trauma is worse. It's not a competition, right? Um, but for me, there was so much rage because I had all my emotions pushed down. I couldn't speak. I couldn't feel like I could move. Felt like it was in a straitjacket. I was being gaslighted. I was being controlled, manipulated, all these things, right? Which again was what was supposed to happen. To the point where for me to get to sleep, I had to bang my head on the pillow until I was exhausted to be able to sleep. And then the next thing, I'm in an asylum when I'm 16 and I get electroconvulsive therapy. And it'd be easy. And I did feel sorry for myself, right? I was a victim. And people would reinforce that. But I never told anybody about that stuff ever. I never told anybody that I used to bang my head to go to sleep. Never told anybody that I'd been in asylum. Why? Because I was freaking ashamed of it, right? And then other things that happened to me when I was a kid, which are in the book, that were very traumatic and humiliating, but I kept it all inside. And what I didn't realize by doing that, I was only living half a life because I was ashamed of those things. I was afraid that other people would find out about them, especially my relationships. And because they found out about those things, maybe they won't love me and I'll lose them. So I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to take that chance, right? But there's also a part of you that knows they could find out. And that if they do find out, they might not love you. So you're holding part of yourself back to protect yourself, right? So you can never love anybody because you can't love someone fully without letting go of the fear of losing them. And so you got a choice, you can, to share that is an incredible level of trust, right? Because the person that you share those things with could betray your trust 100%. And you may even have experienced that at some point, which has made it even more difficult for you to be vulnerable. But at some point, you come to the realization is that I don't have a real relationship with them anyway. So I might as well be vulnerable with them because then I'm going to know whether I can trust them. If they betray that trust, well, now you know. And now you know that's not someone that you want to live with for the rest of your life. When would you rather know that? Sooner or later? Would you rather just bury your head in the sand and hope it never happens, but not be able to love them fully or receive their love fully? Or would you rather know now so you can find the person that is right for you to be with, that you can be vulnerable with, and you can trust? Because people think that they're going to find trust in the bedroom. You're never going to find it there, right? It's before you get in the bedroom, right? Intimacy is when you can share your deepest, darkest shadow self and know that your partner accepts you for all that stuff, not just the perfection, but the imperfection in you, right? Because when that happens, that level of trust, I will tell you, your experience in the bedroom is going to go through the roof, right? Because they can express their sexuality, you can express your sexuality. There's no judgment. You know they love you for who you are and you them. And that's a different level.
I've always looked at intimacy as into me. Are you into me?
Intimacy. Yeah. Do you see into me
Absolutely.
to see who I really am? Yeah. Yeah. But if you're not prepared to show who you are, how can they see?
You can't have true love without vulnerability
Mm.
because
Mm-mm.
you will always be on guard. And to your point, right? Like you won't, when you're vulnerable with someone, the level of trust and commitment you have to that person, because that person can damage you in a way that
Mhm.
someone down the street can't.
Yeah.
But that person can love you in a way that that person down the street can't. Do you see some people struggling with being vulnerable in their relationships? If so, why?
Oh, it's one of the biggest issues, right? Lots of reasons. For men, usually we're taught that it's weakness. You can't be vulnerable. You got to be the strong one. You've got to, take care of the girl, and you can't make her see or let her see any vulnerability in your armor, right? That's what we're taught. Women, it's not easy for them either because they're afraid that a man won't understand how difficult it is for them to be vulnerable and start talking about what you've told them, right? Share it, not even take it seriously. That is very destructive, as any woman will be able to tell you, right? So it's not easy for either side, right? But what I just say is, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I just say it's going to be worth it. Now, I have to temper that by saying, you don't want to you don't want to start sharing your deepest and darkest secrets on the first date. I'm not saying that, right? That's not going to pull him in. That's going to scare the crap out of him, right? But when you are ready to be in a long-term serious relationship, you should by then have created the space to be vulnerable. And if you haven't, you're not ready to be in a long-term serious relationship because you haven't built up enough trust, right? So this is one of the ways you build that trust. You're not married, you're not living together, which people do way too quick, right? You've got to the point where you've got to know each other. You're no longer with their representative. The real person has shown up, right? So you know who they are. You know they're not perfect, right? Um, and so then you have these conversations. And then if they honor your vulnerability, then maybe it's something you want to take to another level. But until you've done that, you're like playing Russian roulette, right? You're taking a much bigger chance than if you become vulnerable with them, build trust, and build intimacy. And you continue to build on that, right? You don't have to share every single thing right out of the gate, right? You can share, I talk about being vulnerable and then I put it all in a book. You don't have to start out putting in a book either, right? Just share it with your partner and, do it gradually like everything else, right? So, yeah, vulnerability. And the thing about, so here's what I learned, right? So vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a power. Why is it a power? Well, if you share all these things, there's nothing left to find out. So, it's like that gives you a freedom. It's freedom, you know? And as you said correctly, you can't have love without vulnerability. It's just not possible. It's the same thing when people say, I want to be loved, but I'm not prepared to love because I'm too scared, right? What if they don't love me back? So I'm going to hold back. And they're thinking the same. And so before you know it, you start out like this. Everything is bliss, right? You can't keep your hands off each other. And then someone does something, the other one goes, ooh, I don't know if I like that. And then you go, I felt them step back. I'm going to step back. And before you know it, you're at the other side of the room and you can't remember how you got there, right? So it's a process. I mean, people get in a relationship and they get out of a relationship, but neither happens overnight, right? So, and I talk about this with, couples and say, look, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot happened already that have got you where you are. But if you can remember how you felt when you first met, and that first period you call the honeymoon period, well, you were both doing things during that time you are not doing anymore. You stopped. You started taking each other for granted. One does it, the other does it. Then the other does it more. And before you know it, you can't remember how you got there, right? But what we do know, because I just asked you, you can remember what you did in the first place. And you got to go back to that. You can never start working on your relationship. Women will say, he never tells me he loves me. And he goes, what do you mean? I told you 3 years ago. What's wrong with you? Right? You know what I mean? All right. Well, she used to do this for me, and she says, well, I did it for you 2 years ago. You've got to keep it going, right? It's not something, and this happens in relationships, and it, man. People go, well, we're married now, so we're good. We don't have to do anything anymore because we're married and we're going to be together forever. Yeah. And how's that working out? It's a responsibility to nurture that relationship from the day you get married or before until the day you die. And you cannot ever take it for granted. Not easy. Well, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I just said it's going to be worth it, right? But like anything, you get out of it what you put in. And if you just don't think you got to put in anymore, well, you may as well get divorced now because it's just there's only one way it's going to go.
I see also some people forget, or maybe they never knew how to understand the way that their partner wants to be loved. They assume, well, I like flowers, so that he must like flowers, or I like money and she must like money. Well, did you ask her? Did you ask him? They're like, no, but I know that this is what they love. I was like, okay, so you didn't ask them, they didn't tell you, so where did you get this information from?
Yeah. I don't know why this is. I mean, I think we're both, both sides are this way. Probably women more than men. I know I'm going to get berated for that, vilified for that, but let me tell you why. And I don't know the full psychology of this, but women would rather a man figure it out than tell them. Because if they feel like if they are telling the man what they want, then he's not doing it because he wants to. He's doing it because I told him to, right? And so, women, you got to get over that, right? You've got to tell people what you want. You got to give them a chance, right? You got to give them a chance to give you what you want. And you know this, we've got different love languages. We feel loved, and we want them all, right? But there are certain primary ones, right, that we want to experience. Um, so yeah, man, it's like, it's like saying, you want to learn how to be a mechanic. Okay. So the best way to do that then is just, go figure it out on your own, right? Just start tinkering around with your car and you'll figure it out. No, you won't. You got to go study how to be a mechanic, how an engine works, right? All that stuff. Well, marriage is the same thing. You don't get into it knowing how it all works. There's no class in school for young boys to go into where they say, well, let me explain how women think, right? They are a different species. They have different wants and needs. And how are you going to fulfill them if you don't know what they are? And vice versa, right? So if the sooner we figure out that we've got to study the opposite sex, learn how to understand them, and through our understanding, we can give them the love they want the way they want to get it. Otherwise, we're just going to be pushed together and God knows where it's going to end up because nobody has a clue what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? It makes no sense, does it really? Right? And most people don't figure it out because it's so easy to fall into victimhood. And unfortunately, what people do that is very corrosive as well is they vent, right? Women are very good at telling all the friends all the things that are wrong with their husband or boyfriend, right? Which is the last place you want to share that shit, right? Because the other girls are going, oh, great. Now I've got all the weaknesses, and I know all about him. And some of them are thinking, wow, I want to be with that guy. I mean, you just don't get into this stuff, right? If you've got issues, go to the person, go to them, talk to them about it. Doesn't mean you got to beat them over the head with a pan, but you just, you chat about it and you just say, the other day when this, and this happened, yeah. Well, you didn't know this, but this is how it made me feel. Now, we know we can't really make anybody feel anything, but you're not going to start out there when someone's coming to you with some hurt or pain. You're not going to put it back on them, right? So, but then you can say, well, I really didn't realize that. And usually they really don't. They have no idea. That completely went over their head. But the woman is waiting for him to figure it out. Well, you're going to wait a long time. And during that waiting period, you're just going to get more and more frustrated, right? So you may as well tell him, right? This is what happened. This is how I felt. And give him a chance to say, well, look, I had no idea. I would never have done that had I known. And it won't happen again. Now you got what you wanted, right? Now you got the result you want. Great. We can carry on, right? But unfortunately, those things don't get resolved because of fears. It could be a fear of, well, if I tell him, maybe he'll leave me. If I tell him that he upset me, maybe he'll leave and he won't come back. I mean, it sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but these are the kind of things that are going on in people's heads, right? We all have a narrator that's just eating away at us all the time and telling us all kinds of bullshit that when we say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous, right? Why would I even think that? But you do because it was programmed when you were a child, you know? In the book, when I write about Tamaz, who was just absolutely, she was a former international supermodel, man. She was just not drop dead gorgeous. But I tell this story in the book, um, and more than one occasion, something like this happened. So I'd go into the bathroom, right? And we were both getting ready to go somewhere. And she'd be looking in a mirror and doing a thing, and she would say, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And I'd be like looking in the mirror going, "Are you fucking insane right now? What?" She said, "I just don't think I'm beautiful." And I would say to her, "Now, look, listen, I just want to tell you something right now. Don't ever say that in front of another woman because they will kill you. They would die to look like you, right? But it doesn't matter what I say." She was told as a child that she wasn't pretty. And she was told that over and over again. So the person that was telling her didn't need to tell her anymore. Now she has a voice in her head telling that. And it doesn't matter that she grew up into this beautiful woman. She still has that voice that's telling her that. So the analogy I use or sometimes share is, in India, when an elephant is born, the baby elephant, they tie it to a tree with a rope, a little rope, right? And the elephant tries to get away, but it can't. But when the elephant becomes an adult elephant, guess what they do? They tie it to the tree using the same little rope. And the elephant has tried to get itself away from that when it was a baby elephant so many times and it couldn't. It no longer even tries. So it just stands there because it's been conditioned to believe that. And a lot of these things that happen to us as children, we're conditioned to believe those things, even though we've grown up, even though everything has changed and we're not that anymore, right? Or we never were. It was just somebody trying to make us feel bad because they did. And I say, look, anybody who tells you anything about you that is less than loving, it's not about you. It's about them, that they don't feel loved. So they don't want you to feel loved. The problem is very often we keep passing it along, right? Generationally, right? So your opportunity is number one for you to realize it isn't true. And then to make sure that you don't pass that on, that you pass on with your children, that you know they're amazing, they're perfect, they're beautiful, and you love them. And that's how we break generational patterns.
You give an example from your book, Stephen. I want to touch on that. Take us through your book, what it meant to you, what you want people to learn, and how it's helping relationships.
Yeah, well, the focus for me of with bringing it out was number one. I know that when I was going through these things, and probably for most of my life, I felt alone, right? That I was the only one going through these things, and we both know that's ridiculous. Right? We're just one of everybody, right? But we're all going through these things in some way, shape, or form. But if we are not talking about this in a constructive way, we're not working on these things in a constructive way. We're going to hide them within us and we're going to feel alone because how could you feel connected if people don't know who you are, right? If they don't know what you've been through, if you continue to be ashamed of those things and not prepared to talk about them, then how can anybody know you? And because nobody knows you, you feel alone, right? So it's a self perpetuating pattern, right? Now, again, I would say, be careful who you talk to, right? Sometimes people think that all these people are their friends and they're not, right? Oh, I got many friends. No, you don't. You've got many acquaintances. You will only have a maximum of five real friends in your life because there isn't time to build those relationships, to build that trust to the level where they are really friends, right? Don't kid yourself. And many people that you think are your friends are jealous. They don't have your best interest at heart, and they will destroy you if they can. Now, I'm not making a judgment. I'm just stating a fact, right? It doesn't mean you can't have them around, but be careful. Be careful how much you confide in them. Be careful how much you trust them with your truths, right? When you share these things, share them with friends who will be straight with you, who love you enough to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear, so they can find out more that they can use against you, right? So, you got to be aware. People go, wow, dude, this is a lot of shit. I know, right? I know, but this is the world we live in, right? We live in a world where, to a large extent, and this is part of the society that we need to heal, where everybody's in it for themselves. And you are competition, right? And men and women feel the same way. Men are very competitive, right? So are women, right? I don't want her hanging around my boyfriend. She's too pretty, right? So I either got to destroy her reputation or I got to get rid of her. One of those two things is going to happen. I'm just saying this happens a lot, right? But your friends would never do that. And so you got to be conscious. If you, for example, if you have a so-called friend who comes to you and is constantly criticizing the other girls in your group, she's not your friend. You don't think she's doing that about you? She's telling you who she is, right? And you the same. You don't want to be the betrayer, right? Don't ever speak about anybody else in a way that you wouldn't speak about them when you're with them. That will create a reputation. That will cause people to respect you. That will cause people to trust you because you don't speak in derogatory ways about anybody else. And don't do it about your boyfriend or your girlfriend either. That's even worse, right? It will come back and it will hurt them and it will also hurt you. Always be supportive of the person you love, especially in front of other people. Now, you can, when you get home, you can say, listen, I didn't agree with what you just did there, right? But we're going to talk about it privately, right? You know what I mean? These are little things that make a huge difference. People cut each other up saying they're joking. It's not funny. It is not funny. Even though it may seem so in the moment, everybody else is laughing and your partner is kind of laughing because they feel they have to. It is not funny. It's destroying your relationship.
Let me ask you, Stephen. I want to ask you one final question before I let you go, because you touched on something that put me in a reflective mood, and I was like, okay, I can follow where Stephen is going here because I've witnessed that, and I've been in situations where you would be around the gossip and things like that, and someone will say, "Oh my God, so and so is saying this, so and so saying that," and then when you realize that that person can be saying the exact same thing about me to another group of people, some people are in shock. They're like, "No, no, no, not
Yeah.
me."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, you. Probably even more so you because you're so blinded by it.
Yeah.
Even if the person was talking about you, you would even be able to, you wouldn't accept it as being possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, one of the problems with that is that when people are sharing this stuff with their friends, all their friends are glued. They're like, oh, well, tell me more. So they're getting attention by doing this, but they don't realize that they're betraying trust. And people will go, oh, tell me more. Tell me. So they've got some ammunition against that person, right? And they think it's going to make them feel better about themselves, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Stephen, let me ask you this final question. Three wishes again, my friend. What are three things you wish people knew about having healthy trust in relationships and why?
You got me with this one last time, man. I should have remembered you were going to come up with this one, man. This is a tough one, right? So, three things that what I would share with people, I would want people to know. Is that what it was?
Yes, yes.
Okay, three things I'd want people
About
to know
healthy trust. Let's
about
keep it
health.
nice and simple.
Okay,
About
about
healthy
healthy
trust.
trust. Okay. All right. Well, I think one of them is what I just said. Don't say anything about anybody else you wouldn't say in front of them. Um, Always support your partner, especially in public. If you have an issue with them, don't talk to other people about it. Go directly to them. Now, I know people are scared to do that. It's not easy, but like I said earlier, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I just said it's going to be worth it because we do want to vent about these things, but we go to the wrong places. And your friends are not the place to go. Now, your friends are still going to vent their stuff and probably tell you about their stuff, but that's up to them, right? They're doing that. Doesn't mean you have to do it. And it doesn't mean that you can't have them as acquaintances, but be careful who you consider to be a friend. And that's going to be a very small group of people.